Ladies and gentlemen, a country that threatens the sovereignty of over 20 nations should be called out for what it is. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi did just that when he declared that the era of expansionism, pointing at China, is over. Tonight, leaders from Japan to Russia to Cambodia are all joining hands to push the social imperialist China into oblivion. Bharat is leading from the front.
पूरे विश्व ने विस्तारवाद के खिलाफ मन बना लिया है। आज विश्व विकासवाद को समर्पित है।
As he thundered in Ladakh's Nimu, the tremors were felt in Beijing.
विस्तारवाद का युग समाप्त हो चुका है। ये युग विकासवाद का है। तेजी से बदलते हुए समय में विकासवाद ही प्रासंगिक है। विकासवाद के लिए ही अवसर है और विकासवाद ही भविष्य का आधार भी। बीती शताब्दियों में विस्तारवाद ने ही मानवता का सबसे ज्यादा हित किया, मानवता को विनाश करने का प्रयास किया। विस्तारवाद की जीत जब किसी पर सवार हुई है, उसने हमेशा विश्व शांति के सामने खतरा पैदा किया। और साथियों, ये न भूले, इतिहास गवाह है कि ऐसी ताकतें मिट गई हैं या मुड़ने के लिए मजबूर हो गई। विश्व का हमेशा यही अनुभव रहा है और इसी अनुभव के आधार पर अब इस बार फिर से पूरे विश्व ने विस्तारवाद के खिलाफ मन बना लिया है।
On his surprise visit to Ladakh, Prime Minister made sure the message to expansionists was clear. In his 26-minute speech, Prime Minister did not name China, but they were clearly unsettled.
当前中印双方正通过军事和外交渠道就缓和当前事态进行对话沟通。在此情况下，任何一方都不应采取可能导致边境局势复杂化的举动。
The Chinese are on the back foot. They say it's groundless to view China as expansionist, but here's a fact check. At present, China has unresolved boundary issues with at least 20 countries. The recent face-off over the Senkaku's island with Japan. China's claim over Bhutanese land. Claiming Mongolia entirely and part of Cambodia under historical precedent. And the latest being striking a sour note with Russia over Vladivostok. China has made its social imperialism clear with each country in the neighborhood. But the world has seen through China. They stand strongly with India on each of its steps, whether it is America backing the move to ban 59 Chinese apps or Japan strengthening intel sharing.
शांति और मित्रता हर कोई स्वीकार करता है, हर कोई मानता है बहुत जरूरी है, लेकिन हम ये भी जानते हैं कि शांति निर्बल कभी नहीं ला सकता। कमजोर शांति की पहल नहीं कर सकता।
Let's debate.
Jim Rogers from Singapore, Kamal Sibal, former Foreign Secretary, GVL Narasimha Rao, BJP spokesperson, Saurabh Shukla of News Mobile, Ambassador Alan Pincus, former Consul General of Israel to the US, Ravi Batra, eminent attorney from New York and chair of the National Advisory Council for South Asia Affairs. And my first question is to Einar Tangen from Beijing, who is a political and economic affairs expert. Einar, purely analytically speaking, it's been remarkable to see the kind of rousing response that Narendra Modi's description of China as an expansionist country, putting out an antiquated ideology, has got globally. Globally, everybody is appreciating India for calling out China for what it actually has very unfortunately become. And the principal question that China is being asked and the embattled Xi Jinping is being asked is that does Xi Jinping not learn from history? That when Benito Mussolini followed the expansionist policy, he was brought to his knees. And even Hitler thought he had an army, equipment and weapons, but he was defeated. And if you see the link between Adolf Hitler and Benito Mussolini, particularly the circumstances in which they tried to do what Jinping is obviously trying to replicate are also very interesting, but even closer home to Jinping. Did he not see what happened to Genghis Khan? You know, where does expansionism ever take a leader? And even Japan was defeated. So, you know, for a country to be internationally recognized for being an expansionist country is not a good thing. Does Jinping not realize that? I'd like you to open the debate. Einar and Kamal Sibal will respond. Yes.
Okay, so there are always different sides to the issue, and at this point, China feels that they're the ones who are put upon. International press, they see us attacking them all the time. The U.S. is imposing sanctions, accusing them of everything from genocide to stealing IP. So at this point, they feel somewhat surrounded, embattled. They were taken aback by what happened in Kashmir when India reversed on the 360, which is something within their purview, but it changed the status quo, along with the road building and also statements by senior government officials saying that they would not rest until they took back areas in Asaki Chin and also in Pakistani-controlled Kashmir, where China has a $62 billion project on the Belt and Road. So from China's point of view, they're suspicious. All of the goodwill that was created in Chennai and Wuhan, unfortunately, it seems to have gotten lost somewhere in translation. I mean, if anything, Xi Jinping has learned from history that he does not want to see another colonial era where two Asian countries, India and China, are in essence pitted against each other to make it easier for others to rise or take advantage of the trade situation. So I think he's looking at the longer period of history, not necessarily just this.
Okay,
I mean, in 2013, he was the one who said that he thought China and India could define the Asian century.
Thank you for your opening remarks. I'd like Kamal Sibal to come in. I just want to put out a slight factual inaccuracy in what you presented. You said that Xi Jinping reacted to India building roads on Indian side of our border and on the abrogation of Article 370, you described as a 360, and that you felt was undoing the spirit of Chennai. I'd like to remind you that Chennai was October 2019. And we had repealed 370 much before that. We had made the statement on taking back Aksai Chin much before that. And by the way, okay, Saurabh's dying to have a go. By the way, do we tell you what you did in Xinjiang?
Yeah.
Do we tell you what roads you built on your side? You're expansionist. The problem with you is you're expansionist. That's the problem. That's your bane. Saurabh. Okay, Mr. Sibal wants to respond. 1 second. Let's get Kawal Sibal first, please. Let's get Kawal Sibal. No. Let Kawal Sibal speak first, Saurabh, please, if you may. Kawal Sibal.
Look, I'm a bit surprised at what our Chinese. I have a feeling that they have become quite incapable to look at their own actions, how they have been provoking conflict and clashes with India politically, diplomatically, strategically. Now, firstly, they say that our Home Minister said that we'll take back Aksai Chin. But I can quote years and years of statements, at least very aggressively from 2005, when China has been claiming Arunachal Pradesh and South Tibet, and protesting when our Prime Minister or our President or anybody went there, protesting when any small development project was made there, and renaming the areas in Arunachal Pradesh with Tibetan names. They have redrawn the map of Tibet, and we've not protested. So far as Article 370 is concerned, it is an internal redrawing of borders within our state. It has nothing to do with the external boundaries of India. We have always shown Aksai Chin in our maps right from 1954 as belonging to India, so it's nothing new. So China cannot pretend that this is a new provocation. But let me mention the provocations of China. First of all, apart from claiming Arunachal Pradesh, they have developed this China-Pakistan economic corridor in a territory which they themselves have recognized does not legally belong to Pakistan. Now, if we accept the logic of China and Pakistan that is disputed territory, so on what logical ground are they making this China-Pakistan economic corridor and spending billions of dollars and positioning their people and their PLA soldiers in a disputed territory and creating a security threat from India from two sides? One from their side, from Tibet, on three sides in fact, on top from Xinjiang, and now from Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. Worse, they took the Kashmir issue back to the United States Security Council in a terrible provocation to India. And the Kashmir issue has never been discussed in the Security Council since 1957. And what was the ground of taking it? It is as if we took the Tibet issue to the United Nations Security Council. It amounts to that, questioning India's territorial sovereignty in Jammu and Kashmir. And insidiously, in fact, when they say that we can't build roads on our territory, they are violating 2005 parameters and guidelines for finding a settlement of the border, which actually in Article 6, I think, talks about mutual and equal security. Now, how do we have mutual and equal security if they continue to build roads on their side, improving their military infrastructure, putting their railway lines there, everything else there, and if you build roads on a border, it is a threat to China. It's the reverse.
Yeah.
In fact, whatever they are doing in Tibet is a threat to India.
Yeah.
And then more than that, what happened in Depsang? When the Chinese Prime Minister was to visit India, they move into Depsang. When President Xi is in India, they do the tumor incident. There have been constant provocations on their side. And for a big country like China, third largest geographically in the world, to even bully and kick around a small country like Bhutan and occupy their territory and press them.
Why would you? I just curious. You know, if you just look at this. Sorry to interrupt, Kawal Sibal, but I want a quick response from Einar on this. You know, somewhere we are now beginning to get increasingly convinced that China has lost it. You're fighting with Myanmar. You are fighting with Bhutan. You're saying Bhutanese territory is ours, Japanese territory is ours, Vietnamese seas are ours, Hong Kong is ours, India's territory is ours. Nepal's territory is ours. You even, for God's sake, even think that Vladivostok is yours. You know, what is this land grab attitude? Why? Why, Ainar, has China lost it so badly? Can you briefly try and explain this? It's very intriguing.
Well, I think that's your perception. From a Chinese point of view, they feel that they're protecting, in an increasingly hostile and uncertain world, they're protecting what they believe is theirs, just as India is doing. So this kind of ratcheting up the rhetoric and the politics of grievance isn't going to solve anything. I was actually very heartened by Modi's visit to Ladakh, in essence saying that, you know, a cooler head is going to prevail. And instead of just having these army generals go back and forth,
you didn't hear Modi. You didn't hear Modi. Saurabh, you can tell him what Modi said. Modi said clearly to you that the enemy country should know that we have a strong ability to be aggressive. Yeah, he didn't speak what you are trying to interpret him to say. I don't know what Global Times is reporting.
But he was not
No, because you don't have access to free media.
Let me just...
No, you don't have access to free media in Beijing.
He's not responding to the...
No, you don't have access to free media. I'll tell you what he said. One minute. Let me, and then sort of handing it over to you.
Sir.
He said, I am with my troops. And he said, I am ready to get aggressive if I am pushed anymore, as in we. He was very clearly rolling up his sleeves. He said, we are battle ready if necessary. He warned you on your expansionist agenda. He very clearly said that this 1.3 billion people are with us. And he said, talking about the enemy, China, that China has seen both our fire and our fury, and described China as Dushman, which in Hindi means enemy. So I don't know what Global Times is reporting, but I hope you heard what he said. Yes, this was classic.
Well, I was
classic
actually
Narendra
reading
Modi.
the Indian newspapers.
I
mean, yes. I mean, the jingoism
You should read
aside,
Republic World. You'll
not...
get a more accurate description of what was said. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I will in the future. But in terms of what he was saying, he wasn't giving into these voices that said that it's time to push for war.
Can I just intervene now and tell you what is the perspective from Delhi? Let me just explain to you what the Prime Minister actually meant. You know, when he went there, he was invoking an axis of democracies. He's sending out a message to the world that India will take on a bully, a global bully which runs a supermarket of bullying and which specializes in land grab. India, this is the new India that China and Xi is dealing with, and they will deal them a bloody blow if that requires them to fight out on the border. That's what the Indian Prime Minister is saying. He has exercised a range of options.
Yeah.
He welcomed him with a hand of diplomacy in Chennai. He also made sure that he wanted to mend trade ties, but China betrayed India. And China has been betraying a lot of other countries across the globe.
Okay, now let me get Ravi and Jim Rogers and Ambassador Alan Pincus on the debate. Ambassador, and may I get Ravi Batra and Jim Rogers, and let me tell you one thing, Ravi, about Jim. China can carry out the world's greatest genocide, which it has, but Jim loves China. China can sterilize millions of Muslim women in Xinjiang, Ravi, but Jim loves China. China has put millions of people in Xinjiang, Uyghurs, in concentration camp situations, but as long as Jim feels he's making money off China, because he's the chairman of Rogers Holdings, he doesn't give a damn. So that is the unfortunate position. And it is my moral responsibility, and so is it yours, Ravi, to show him the light. And to also tell him that this time, China is being contradicted. So Ravi, I'd like to start with you. Maybe you can show a little bit of light to Jim about why China is being responded to across the world, not just US and India.
Sure. Good to see you, Arnab.
Good to see you, Ravi.
Taking off the word light, I invite 1.3 billion Indians to congratulate America for July 4th, where there's a lot of fireworks and a lot of light. China was created by Chairman Mao, who has not been given full credit as being a great military genius. Because of his genius, in 49, he had the Karachi Agreement. In 58, they took Tibet. In 62, they took the Golan Heights of India and made them their own, the Himalayas. Now, with the South China Sea going on for a number of years, I can tell you I had a conversation with Chinese Foreign Minister Wang in September of 2017, where I said, and at that time there was no belligerence, relative to the Wuhan virus being exported deliberately and wolf warrior mentality for their diplomats. So this is all prior to the Wuhan virus as well as the belligerence. But just the South China Sea, and I said to the foreign minister, you're giving the world a choice. You're giving America the choice of either a little war now or a big war later. And while nobody wants a war, every rational person will prefer a small war now. And Minister Wang said, no wars, no wars. Yet there's been a deliberate export of the Wuhan virus, which has Pearl Harbored us over 50 times. We lost about 2,400 people on December 7, 1941. We've lost over 125,000 people because of the Wuhan virus, and 1.5 million have been infected. That's just the United States, okay? Their boats have rammed the Philippines, fishing boats, in Philippines waters. They have rammed and those down. They rammed a Vietnamese boat in Vietnamese water, and they saved the fishermen and put them in a Vietnamese port, but claiming that the entire South China Sea is China's. So if the Indian Ocean is named Indian Ocean, that means it's all of India. And the Pacific Ocean, because there's no country by the name of Pacific, that means it's open the OK Corral. It's not true. China is on an expansionist policy. Prime Minister Modi, by the way, happens to be 100% right that China is against the wave of time. It is a time of development. It's a time of introspection, like we are going through, every life matter. But China is on this belligerence to recreate the Ming Dynasty, which is a code word for rejuvenation.
Jim, why don't you call them out? I just want to tell you, Jim, they're coming close to you. I would not be surprised if they next claim Singapore. So I wonder today why all reasonable people, including you, should not call them out. It's a bigger debate, and you should not look at it from the point of view of your personal economic interests. Jim.
Arnab, let me say to you again, I love India, and I know that no matter what Delhi said, if they said the sky is not full, you would say the sky is not. But Arnab, why don't we solve the problem instead of stirring up nationalist fervor? Since the beginning, since the Greek times, we have known the first casualty of war is truth. Nobody knows. You weren't there and I weren't there. Everybody's against expansionism. So why don't you try to solve the problem instead of stirring up nationalism and stirring up war? Let's solve the problem. I don't know if the Indians did it or the Chinese did it. I don't care.
Ravi.
I want to solve the problem. Nobody is
Who started the problem?
Neville Chamberlain said to Hitler.
Maybe you, when Delhi says, let's have expansionism.
Who started the problem? Yeah, okay, Ravi.
Listen, it doesn't even matter. The point is, in life, you always have a choice. You can either compromise. If it's not of principles, if it's irrelevant stuff, it's called a compromise. If it's principles and sovereignty, it's called appeasement. And in 1938 and 39, the world went through a whole phase of appeasement, in the form of Neville Chamberlain. Today, we have lots of people who want to become Neville Chamberlain. I have no use for any of them because we're not prepared to go through another Nazi Germany type of expansionism, concentration camps, or worse, the Ming Dynasty's recreation of a tribute system where every nation becomes a best. I'm an American, and I will not serve on bent knee.
Yeah.
Okay? Washington said you can separate an American from everybody else because we would rather die on our feet than live on bent knee.
Absolutely.
And what China is doing
Okay,
is
I have Ambassador Alan Pincus with me and GVL Narasimha Rao and a lot of people enjoying this discussion on the use of the word as expansionism. Ambassador, you've been a very experienced diplomat for your country. I thought it was wonderful that Modi used the word expansionism with such deliberate intent. What do you think?
Well, first of all, Arnab, I'm really flattered as an Israeli to mediate between two small countries like India and China. I mean, what can I say? I mean, we have so much positive experience in the Middle East about negotiating and coming to terms that it's only natural that you approach me. But per your question, Arnab, look. This is sort of getting lost in this Corona or COVID-19 pandemic, and people around the world, outside of India and outside of China, are assuming, there are two sides to the argument. There's the valid Chinese argument. There's a very valid Indian anxiety. China is perhaps taking advantage of India's economic woes in the last few months and in the upcoming months, and trying to signal or express who's the #1 force in Asia. But there's a bigger picture here about expansionism. It is, and I say this with regret and sorrow and misfortune. The idea that America is retreating from global leadership, the idea that no one looks up to America to intervene or mediate, the idea that China thinks that it could get away, or India for that matter thinks it could get away, I'm not getting into the specifics, is all about the American abdication of global responsibility, which has mitigating circumstances and precedes President Trump. But in one sentence, Arnab, yes, Prime Minister Modi used the word expansionism. We're familiar with that. History is replete with that. In the end, I think he's facing a major dilemma. The idea or the option of escalation that no one wants, or ignoring this thing, which would be a national humiliation in a way, something that India cannot and should not tolerate.
I'd like GVL Narasimha Rao of the BJP to respond to what you're saying. GVL.
No. You see, Ambassador Allen, I think he's not reflecting the reality. I think he seems to indicate that there are countries out there who are discussing the positions taken by both India and China. But that's not the case. No country in the world, at least no major country in the world, thinks that India is an aggressor. In this case, China is clearly an aggressor.
I agree. I did not say that.
Okay, so there are. You look at the views being expressed around the world. Taking the example of United States that you indicated, you have a bipartisan consensus in that China is the aggressor. China is actually causing the border dispute in India, and that's the view generally being heard all over the world. So China, by taking this kind of approach towards India, China has really earned a very bad name for itself, and it's going to get hit from all sides. And India's position on banning even 59 apps has the support of the rest of the world. And this could possibly pave the way for the rest of the world to follow. So certainly China has taken this, has miscalculated its move. And Prime Minister Mr. Narendra Modi today sent out an unambiguous message that India will brook no interference. India will not allow China to mess up. And India will teach a lesson to China.
Can I respond to that?
You may. GVL Allen wants to respond. Well, yes, you may.
Here's the thing, Mr. Rao. I totally agree with what you're saying, except for one thing. Do not misinterpret the bipartisanship support for India because it stems from a bipartisanship anti-sentiment toward China, having to do with President Trump and an election on the 3rd of November. But don't forget, the American economy is entwined with the Chinese economy. That's not going to change. And a border skirmish or dispute that you rightly and justifiably take seriously is completely unknown and uncharted water for 99.9%.
No, but is that our expectation? Alan, sorry to intervene, but I'd like Kamal Sibal, who you know is a very, very experienced voice on these matters here. Mr. Sibal, Alan Pincus is indicating that we are over-interpreting or over-investing in the possible American support. Now, my only point of slight nuance difference from Alan on this is, and Kamal Sibal, we can throw light on it. I'll just say one thing. Alan, we are not over-investing in American support. It is about India taking a global lead position. It is about India being a beacon saying that China's power trip is over. It is about India challenging Chinese clout in the WHO, where our health minister is the chair of the World Health Organization's executive board. It is about Indian power. India, again, non-permanent member of the UNSC. Collective power is growing. China is on a weak footing. This India versus China. And therefore, what we are saying today, 10-nation ASEAN bloc has snubbed China. And naturally, geopolitically, they, as well as Australia, everyone are aligning with us. So, small point of difference here. You seem to feel that we're leaning too much and expecting American support, Alan. I don't necessarily look at it that way. Kamal Sibal, please.
Look, in fact, on the American side, there is a feeling that India is being equivocal. India is hedging its bets. India wants strategic autonomy. India is not throwing its full lot with the Western countries, with the United States to take on China.
We have tried to engage China independently of the United States for a long number of years. We've tried to establish a viable relationship with China in the hope that the settlement of the border dispute can take place. That's why we set up this special representatives mechanism. It has met 22 times, and there's been no forward movement. We have agreed on various principles on how to manage the border, 1993, 1996, 2005, 2012, 2013. But all of them have been repudiated by China in its latest aggression in Ladakh. China doesn't respect its solemn word. The second thing I want to underline is that I can understand why other countries want to be equivocal at this time, because they're seeing how the whole thing pans out. But they should judge what China is doing in Ladakh on the basis of what China is doing elsewhere. Look at the 9-dash line where they are claiming the whole of South China Sea. Look at their attitude towards Japan, towards the Philippines, where in fact they lost the case before the arbitration case under the law of the sea, to which they are a party. Look at the way they're treating Malaysia and Natuna Sea, Indonesia and Vietnam, militarizing the islands, reclaiming islands in the South China Sea. Now, this pattern of behavior, which the whole world is condemning, is being replicated now in Ladakh by Xi Jinping as a result of internal dynamics within China. Look at the wolf warrior diplomacy, the kind of abusive language they are using. Look at the manner in which they are threatening sanctions against Australia, against Canada.
And on the basis of what?
So when it comes to India, Arnab, 1 second. And when it comes to India, I don't understand why don't they judge China's behavior on the basis of what they are doing to hurt Western interests.
Yeah, and especially
India, just look at their behavior and then assess what they are doing in Ladakh, rather than trying to be equivocal and
last point. Aina, last point I'll just make before I wrap up, and maybe this point can be driven home to the editor of the Global Times, who's truly comic. He's a guy called Hu Xin. You know, he doesn't know anything about anything. He doesn't know history. We hammered the Chinese in 1967 Nathula conflict. In fact, I'll send you a book, Aina. It's called Watershed 1967 by Prabal Das Gupta. We hammered them. 1967, Somdorongchu, we hammered the Chinese army. China lost, Korean War. What happened to China? Sino-Vietnam War. What happened 1979? 28,000 Chinese dead. The Chinese cannot fight a battle. Russia defeated China. In fact, if I were to say this, Einar, you are aware, I'm sure, that China is the most defeated army in the world.
Arnab, why are you trying to stir up
I'm
war?
just saying that you
trying to sort it out. You weren't
why are you
there.
taking it personal?
I wasn't there. Maybe India started this. Who knows if China started it? But I do know that the first casualty of war is truth.
I'm just telling Einar. I'm just telling Einar. There you see, when you speak the truth.
Try to solve the problem instead of stirring up war.
I'm solving the problem. I'm reminding China that it has the most defeated army in the world, Einar.
Wait a minute. India's had many wars in the past 30 years. Don't you know history? Look at
don't
India
fight
in the
a war you
past
can't
40
fight.
years.
You
You've
can't
had
win.
many wars
I'm talking
with
to
your
Einar.
neighbors.
You're getting unnecessarily unnerved by this. Einar.
Okay, so I don't know that anybody really wins from war. The United States hasn't exactly covered itself in glory in our engagements.
It's not about war.
And I think that's an issue. And I would agree with Jim. If this is about trying to create a war, yes, you're on the right track. But I mean, passive-aggressive chest thumping from, that's the way it's going to be seen.
I don't do
Beijing.
chest thumping. It's only the editor of the Global Times who does that. I'm only a realist.
I'm just saying that there are people who would see it that way.
Okay, Einar, listen, it's been a great conversation. I thank you all. I'm totally short of time, but this has been very interesting. Viewers, the analysis of the word expansionism.